Good morning, everybody. Riot Mort here. It is Sunday, May 11th at like 5:45 a.m. and I'm starting my morning walk today. Um, Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. If you live in the States, make sure you tell your moms Happy Mother's Day. If you don't live in the States and it's not Mother's Day wherever you're at, still call your mom and tell them Happy Mother's Day because you should just do that on random days and it'll make your moms feel good. So, yeah. All right. Thank you to everybody who watched yesterday's walk video. Like I said, something new I was trying, and seems like the people who watched it enjoyed it, which I think this is what I was going for, right? Which is that I don't need, views to be like 20 or 30,000. I'd rather them be 1,000 and people who actually want to watch the content. So, cool. That seems great. Also, thank you to people who already posted questions. We have a couple questions to go through here, and I have to memorize them because my phone's recording, so I can't look them up while I'm walking. But the first question was a pretty straightforward one, which was, how did we decide to do the Set 10 revival? Now, I want to be clear, I am not part of the Set revival team, so, that team makes those decisions. I'm not there for part of that exact decision. So I can't tell you exactly why Set 10 was chosen at this exact moment. But what I can tell you is sort of in the past, some of the decision-making parameters that go into when we pick set revivals, okay? And basically what happens is the product manager on that team looks at all past sets and sort of goes, okay, it's time for a set revival. Which one are we doing? And what are those parameters we need to look into? So for example, one that seems pretty obvious is like, how long has it been since that set was live? Another pretty easy one that I think most people would guess is, how popular was the set, right? How excited are we to bring back set 2 over set 6? Maybe don't bring back the one that almost ruined TFT kind of thing. But those are the obvious ones. What about the inobvious ones? An example of this would be, how much work is it to modernize that set? So, because when we're doing set revivals, we can't just load up an old game state and have like items work the way they did. Like, a lot of things have changed over the course of the years. Even Set 10 is going through this right now. One of the things that changed since Set 10 was how mana was generated and how much it was stored after the fact so that you wouldn't waste Shojin. And this is having a massive implication on Hyperpop, which is leading to all these wild Lulu videos that you've seen. So small little changes like that can have drastic impacts on the set. Now imagine going back to Set 2 and trying to get all of that to work with all of the changes that have happened. Another example is like TFT without augments, right? Set 5, which was, or 5.5, which was that first revival, was before augments. So trying to play the set without augments was a little rough. But we also know like Set 4, which was also before augments, incredibly popular set, especially in Eastern regions. So like the team was like, hey, this is worth the work. We're going to make augments and use augments and things like that. And, update the set. So, how much of that update work do you have to do based on the resources you have available on your team? And so, for example, let's say your team is busy getting, and I have to use things that are already live, so I can't talk about things in the future, but like, let's say your team is busy working on, Chunk's Treasure, or maybe something else on the roadmap, and you're like, dang, we're a little short on resources. We might want to pick a set that is less costly to change and get updated to modern standards, because that one will take a little bit more time, and we need to do that at a time where we have more of those resources. Another thing that we probably don't talk about here is set thematics and how often those are used. And there's a really, really common one that I know, because right after we did Set 4, or Set 5.5, I think a lot of people were expecting set 6 to be the next revival. I mean, set 6 is the top of my personal tier list, but it was like, why hasn't that one been revived? Well, because the release date for that set revival was right after 12, before 13. And so the idea that, hey, ready to play a set revival? Oh, it's that Arcane set right before you're getting ready to play the new Arcane set didn't seem like a great plan, right? Where it's like, why are we going to have you play Arcane set into Arcane set? That's a great way to wear out the theme and get people tired of that. And so oftentimes that long-term roadmap, this is a fake example, but let's say we were going to do a outer space theme set. You probably don't want to revive set 3 right before that, So a lot of the times that has to be taken into account as well. Now, the nice thing about set 10, is that we haven't had anything music related and probably won't for some long ass time. So it works out well where it can just be like slotted in and not really affect any of the thematics long term. So those are a lot of the core decisions that get put into making a set revival. Now, the other thing I'll say with set 10 is that, set 10 is an interesting set in that in Western regions it is very, very popular. And from a thematic standpoint, people love the music, right? Like, I think the music, it might be one of our most popular non-gameplay features, if not the most popular non-gameplay feature we've ever done. So definitely a lot of the people who don't necessarily care as much about like deep gameplay mechanics really, really love set 10. So very popular set. Yeah. The other thing is, I think Chosen, set mechanic wise, Chosen was already done in the set 4 revival. So making sure that one's up to date, also a little less costly because it's basically the same thing. And in fact, I think when we did the set 4 revival, we gave it headliner rules. So it really was just like, there you go, that's already done. So a lot of that comes down to efficiency and things like that. Now, again, this is just, I've been in some meetings where they talk about these things, but as far as this time specifically, you would need to ask that set revival team and see what they, their exact logic. But those are sort of the general paradigms that we use to pick what set to revive. I know, again, this is not speaking to anything coming up in the future. I actually don't even know which set's next after that. But I think common ones that people have been asking for, 6, 7, and 8 seem to be the common ones. 9 also, but 9's tricky in the sense that, anytime there's a Runeterra set, again, that thematic lineup, So, and then 1 and 2, I think 1 and 2, if enter it's really high cost. So, cool. Hopefully that answers that question. Cool. I'm at the uphill part. This is the hardest part of the start of the walk. Okay. That was that question. What was the next question? See, now I'm forgetting what the questions were. I know there was the one about how Mort's doing. I wanted to save that one to the end. Oh, there was the one about the facts. Someone was asking a question about like how I get upset by facts, but I should probably have some empathy because people don't necessarily know the facts. And when you don't know the facts, you sort of create these based on your impressions, based on your anecdotal evidence. You make your own conclusions. And how do people avoid that? And this is an interesting topic because, excuse me, again, the uphill part, almost there. There's been this trend in gaming as the internet has gotten bigger where people need to validate their opinions with the facts they have available. A really common example of this is Steam charts. People feel the need to sort of go, I don't know if this game is a success or not, but what I can do is load up Steam charts, look at that number, compare it to other games, and go, see, I was right. That game is bad. We see this a lot with, I think some of the more recent examples were like Assassin's Creed. There were a couple others. Or, the Concord, right? Where it's like, go to Steam charts and there's like 100 people playing. Which is really a shame because my belief has always been, if you enjoy a game, play a game. But the problem is, I'm getting a little off track here. The problem is there's so many people that almost look at gaming as now like a career and they want to make a living off of it. And if you invest your time to be good in a game like, say, Concord, and then it crashes, your time is wasted, and that's more chances you end up, with your time not being valued. So people need to sort of validate that and find those facts. And when those facts aren't provided, what do you do in the absence of them, And this is tough because human nature in general, when we don't know something, we like to fill in the gaps, right? I'm going to use a personal example here. What causes autism, right? Like, what caused my son to be born the way he is? And sometimes we're guilty of going, man, if it's this, I'm going to be so angry, or if it's this other thing, I'd be upset, because you don't know. And so in that uncertainty, your brain creates a need to explain the unexplainable. And again, I'm using a deep topic there like autism, but this goes all the way to, is TFT a dying game? Or what is the meta, right? Like, the meta is a good example where we don't factually necessarily know the best comp when the data set comes out, but people will try to use data to essentially create that answer because they don't know the answer, right? Humans are inherently looking for the answer to anything that they're unaware of. And so, your question of like, well, how do we deal with that lack of information? That is a question far beyond my capabilities because I'm just a game designer. I can't fight human nature. I can't do anything like that. That's way beyond my pay grade. But what I can say is that in situations like this, you have two choices, right? You can trust that the people who are supposedly the experts, and again, this applies to the autism conversation or, the state of a game or anything like that. You can trust the people who are the supposed experts and the information they give you, or you can doubt them, right? If you believe their intentions are unpure, you will doubt them. For example, if let's say there's a game you really, really don't like. I don't want to use examples. I don't want to throw a game under the bus. But let's say there's a game you out there think isn't very good. And then that game comes out and says, we're doing great. Your immediate reaction as a doubter is going to be, yeah, they're probably just saying that so that their shareholders are happy, or because it's a marketing tactic and they need to say that the game is successful. And so you immediately inherently doubt the information that's been given to you, which is, again, that's your prerogative and that's just human nature. But all of this kind of comes back to the source that you're getting the information from, right? For example, if it's a pre-written corporate, release of here's how our games are doing, a common one I've seen lately is some companies will do a pre-release corporate press release that says, like, we have X million players. And immediately you'll see the doubters go, yeah, but they said players, not sales. So that means people with multiple accounts, or people who are getting it through Game Pass, or not paying the game, or anything like that. And again, that's just, if your natural reaction is to doubt, that's how you're going to respond to that information, even though you're being given information. And so all of this is to say that it comes back to the source of the information, which is why, and this is one of the reasons why I started doing what I'm doing, I was trying to create, I talked about this yesterday, I was trying to create a gap in that misinformation. My entire thing is being way too open and way too transparent sometimes, to the point where I reveal things about myself maybe I shouldn't, or talk about things where occasionally people will come to me on the game team and be like, Mort, you probably shouldn't have talked about that. But by creating that trust, hopefully when I come out with information, people can be like, yeah, if Mort said it, it's probably true. Because again, I don't like to lie to you guys ever. The only time I ever withhold information is if it's about like an upcoming release that I, can't reveal, right? Like, what's the set mechanic for 16? I'm going to lie to you about that because I'm not allowed to tell you yet. But anything else, I try to be pretty honest. So for example, like, how are our player numbers doing? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you, but I will honestly say, like, really good. Player numbers seem insane, actually. Or actually, it's player hours. Player hours are really, really good. The people who are playing TFT are playing a lot of TFT. So, or a common one that gets asked is like, how do we compare to League of Legends? Again, can't tell you. I'm literally supposed to not tell you, which sucks, But hopefully you can infer, that, hey, Mort doesn't seem depressed about player numbers. Probably a good sign. But again, this all goes back to, if you don't have the facts, you can seek out the fact from information givers, and then it's how much you trust those information givers and where your line of skepticism is around that information. And again, hopefully I provide the information as much as I can. So in the case of TFT, if I say the game's not dying, should be pretty clear. But that's all you can do. So hopefully that answers that question. Now, how's Mort doing? There was one other question I really wanted to answer today. Dang it. What was it? See, I gotta write these down before I go on the walk so I don't miss the questions. Oh, what was it? What was the question? Well, I guess I'll do the how's Mort doing one. Someone asked the question, Mort, how are you doing? The answer's weird. And I'm not going to bore you too much. I don't really need to therapy dump all what's on my mind. So I'll try to stay pretty high level here. The good news is, family-wise, things are great. We love living out here now. I can go outside and walk and not see another human being, which is great. We were not California people. So being out here has been good. We get to see my nieces. We have family around if we need it. My daughter's been babysitting, so sometimes my wife and I can just go out for 2 hours, and it's kind of nice. We've got our puppy. But yeah, our relationship is really, really good right now. Biggest challenge coming up for us is my daughter is a junior. She's 17. Next year, we got to figure out what she's doing after high school. She's not a straight A student. She's not somebody who excels in a bunch of stuff. So sending her off to college and wasting a bunch of money doesn't seem like the play. She doesn't seem interested in that. Hilariously enough, she kind of just wants to be a housewife. But you can't be a housewife if you don't have relationships, because modern kids are just on Discord all day. Halfway point. So that's a conversation. The other really weird one here is she needs to get her driver's license, because when you live out in the middle of nowhere, kids today don't want to get their driver's license. And I actually made a very generous deal to her. Her laptop is starting to give out. She goes, I want a new computer. She actually wants a desktop PC now. She never did before. And I said, well, I'm not going to just buy you a laptop or a computer, but I'll tell you what, you get your driver's license and I will get you a computer as a reward. Which, man, if I were a kid and my dad was like, hey, if you get your license, that thing you want, you'll also get a computer, my mind would have exploded. So I feel like I'm being a pretty generous dad here. But so she's got to work at that. I think we'll sign her up for driving classes this summer. But yeah, because then she needs to start, figuring out how to get a summer job, or at least a part-time job, and work that stuff, and got to get that part into her. So that's but yeah, so that stuff's good. I think the problem right now, though, is that if I had to put my time, I would say 20 to 30% is family, and the other 70 to 80% is my job, which is TFT, whether that be playing or doing work or talking to the team. So a lot of my identity is TFT and my job. And obviously I can't go into a lot of things. I've hinted at a curveball that's been thrown my way. Can't really talk about that, but that's a big curveball that has me very nervous. But the other thing is that it feels, and again, this could be my own insecurities, and that's something I have to work through, but it feels like the TFT team has outgrown me in a sense. I've only ever really worked on small teams, and so now that the TFT team is like actually getting pretty big, there are a lot of things happening that just like don't involve me. And so that weird need I have of like, I need to understand everything going on with the game or the project can't be met because, there are just parts or projects that are happening that don't need me, which makes sense because I'm one person. I can't be involved in everything, but it feels weird. I'm not used to it. And so a lot of the times now, if anything, because I opted into this position of gameplay director as opposed to game director, which means there's a layer above me of leadership. People like my boss, our executive producer, head of marketing, et cetera, that have all these like leadership meetings, and they just had like big meetings with our CEOs about our next year plans. I'm not involved in those so that I can focus on making TFT fun. But that's also a pretty career limiting move as well. I want to work on games and make games good. That's the Nintendo in me. And so I have this challenge where the game, I don't know, I don't feel that needed around TFT. I don't know. Which is weird to say because some of the work I do, like, literally no one else can do. And one of the big challenges is actually I need to train some other people to do what I do. But that's leaving me with a weird existential crisis a little bit. And then the other thing is, the longest I'd worked on a game beforehand would, like a single game, was like 2 years, 2.5 years. Any of the Mario versus, now, you could argue the entire Mario versus Donkey Kong franchise was 11 years, but I had breaks in between those games. Aura Climber break, Crosswords puzzle break. So TFT has been 5.5, almost 6 years now. And like a lot of our set mechanics or a lot of our things are like, you give it everything you got, but because it's a live service game, then they're like, okay, but what's next? And you're like, bro, I just gave you the golden goose of my idea, There's there's an upcoming, I got to be careful here. Basically, I feel like I gave my biggest creative thing, which you guys haven't seen yet. And then they're like, cool, what's next? And you're like, I don't know, man. The tank's kind of empty. And I think even now we see players' needs, right? Like a really common thing is like we talked about the reprints, right? The Zyra reprints or the Morgana reprints. And it's like certain champions we've done like 6, 7, 8 times. you know? So how do you make a new Zaya? How do you make a new Kog'Maw? And there's still answers, but typically when you're thinking about a solve, there's a reason the obvious solution is the best solution, because it's intuitive and it makes sense. And so now there's definitely some weirder versions you can make, but you still need that intuitive stuff in your set, TLDR here, I'm a little drained, And then you start having the questions of like, okay, but let's hypothetically, time to move on from TFT. Hypothetically, I'm not saying it is. Then it's like, what's next, right? And I look at like, because I'm aware of things like Riot's R&D portfolio, and it's like, are any of these games I'd want to work on, or do they even want me to work on them? Or, because like 2D Metroidvania, Riot's not making a 2D Metroidvania. That's just not happening. So, you start having doubts. And then you start having the existential doubts of like, well, but I have a job that pays well and supports my family. Why am I whining? I should just keep doing what I'm doing. But game design is inherently a creative outlet. And you can only, draw the same painting so many times before you want to paint something else. And so that's part of what I'm going through. And then the other thing that was deriving me purpose was the content creation side of things. And on that side of things, there were some folks, a lot of Riot is very supportive of that side of things. But there were definitely some at Riot that were sort of like, he shouldn't be doing these. And so while they hashed that out, I was sort of told, don't do anything new. Just keep doing what you're doing, but don't push the bar any. And that was kind of a kick in the teeth a little. And then combine that with like some of the hostility I was getting, et cetera, et cetera. Don't need to rehash all that. I was feeling burnt out about that as well. And so when 70 to 80% of your identity is essentially something you're not feeling as great about, you're left sort of going, ugh. And then to wrap it all up in a nice little bow, the other thing I'm trying to do, hence these morning walks, is I'm trying to be healthier. I wasn't going to talk about this till I actually achieved the goal, but whatever. For my daughter's 17th birthday, I told her for her 18th birthday, what I'm going to give her is a healthy dad that she knows will be around for a while. So April 1st, I started being super healthy. You saw the water bottle, drinking a lot less soda. I haven't had a McDonald's French fry in a month and a half. I have been eating a lot less. I've been exercising. So far, I'm down like 17 pounds. The first bit's always easy. And I was identifying things like whenever I got bored or unhappy, I would just eat because it felt good. I'm not doing that now. But I definitely have these moments where I'm like, I'm bored and kind of meh. I would love some pretzels. Nope. I haven't snacked in a month and a half. And so, but what's funny is I've been trying to find something to fill that gap. And the problem is everything I find only fills it for short bursts. Like, for example, I'll buy a booster box of Magic, and opening and sorting them feels so good. It's really fun. It eats up about 3 hours of time. $100 for 3 hours of time. Not a good cost ratio. So, yeah. But yeah, so TLDR of how I'm doing is I should be doing fine. But there's some things I'm not as excited about. And then finally, public appearance-wise, I don't want to let that bleed out and have people be, because I'm definitely blessed. And, I got to find the next thing to really drive me. And stuff like this, again, this is a great example, right? Like, I decided I wanted to go on walks and talk about things. I'm excited about this. I actually think this is cool. And if people enjoy this, that's great. If people didn't enjoy it, that's fine. I'd stop doing it and I'd try something else. That's also part of the creative process, right? Is coming up with something, trying it, learn from it, and adapt with the goal of making people smile, So, cool. All right, we're reaching the half-hour mark here. Still have about 10 more minutes on my walk. I wish I could remember what that fourth question was. Well, whatever that fourth question was, that's what tomorrow's walk will be. Now, the interesting thing is, today I was originally just going to chill out today, but Roger, for better or worse, probably better, and this is me needing to get off my butt, Roger talked me into going into the double up thing since it's here in Washington. So I'm actually going to post this, hop in the car, do the 2-hour drive up to Seattle, and go say hi to the double up event. And I don't know if I'll be on camera or anything. Roger mentioned I might be. I don't know. But I said I'd be willing to because, I'm always here to help. That's what I always tell them. If they want me to be there, I'll be there to help. So for any of you that are watching that double up event, you may or may not see me today on that. I know Froden's put his heart into that. So if nothing else, just being there to support Froden is a good thing. So yeah, cool. Okay. Well, again, hopefully you guys are enjoying these. I know I heard a lot of people say they were listening to it on their walk, which great, because I will say on my walks, I've been using YouTube Premium. I'll download like a 30-minute or 60-minute YouTube video because once I start walking, there's no internet out here. Starting to rain. Yeah, I live in Washington. It rains. So hopefully I'm providing that for you as well, and you can listen to me on your walks. So I'm on the last uphill part. So, okay, cool. Starting to rain. I'll have to put my hood up. Have a great day. I will be back tomorrow. Same as always, post some questions. I'll also try to be better about remembering what the questions were. If you're the person who wrote that fourth question, don't worry. I'll get to it, I promise. With a better memory. So, all right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.